Today we're going to be making a giant jack-o'-lantern made entirely out of styrofoam blocks. Now this jack-o'-lantern measures 5 feet wide by almost 6 feet tall, so join me for this awesome ride. To begin, we need styrofoam blocks. Now, a lot of you have stated that it's not easy to come by these blocks, but there are a plethora of places that they do make them available, most notably the Tractor Supply store. If you go there, talk to management, see if they'll give you these blocks. Some stores will not, while others are more lenient. But I found all of these on Facebook Marketplace. If you type in styrofoam blocks, many businesses are just giving them away for free. So definitely check Facebook Marketplace or even Craigslist. We're going to need expanding foam for the next step, and we're going to just put them all in one big cube. So let's get ready. Before we add the 28 blocks to make this 52 total, we want to glue the center piece first. So again, you don't have to go to 52 blocks. This is just 24 blocks right here. You could stop right here and just start gluing everything like I'm about to do. But like I said, we're going big on this channel. So we'll grab our expanding foam. We're using window and door expanding foam. It doesn't expand as much as the great stuff Big Gap does. And that's what we need, just a little bit of expansion, but we want the adhesion from the expanding foam. Before we continue with this tutorial, I wanted to show you all the first book that I've written. It's called Little Olive and the Wally Bat, and it's rated for kids ages 2 to 6 years old. It follows a brave little olive that gets lost and is found by a very helpful brown bat. This is the first book I've ever written, and I'm super excited about it. It's available on Amazon via paperback or Kindle. So if anyone wants to support me or read it to their kiddos, go check it out. The link is in the bio of the video, Little Olive and the Wally Bat on Amazon. Now let's get back to this amazing tutorial. Okay, so this is the back of the pumpkin. As you can see, the blocks are in a different direction back here. So we're doing this to save blocks because otherwise we'd be using even more blocks. So as you can see, all of these blocks are going like this, and these are going in this direction, okay? So as you can see right here in the corner, it's not leveled with this corner here, but that doesn't matter because most of this corner is gonna be cut off anyways, because we need to make that round shape of a pumpkin. So really half of this block will be taken away when we cut it. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't line up. And that's my next point. The blocks don't have to line up. Many of these aren't flush with the other block, and that's okay because the foam is going to fill in that area, and when we start carving it, it doesn't matter if there's spaces, doesn't matter if it's cracked or damaged. All of that is just going to be cut off, shaved off, sanded off, so we're good to go. This is what the block should look like after it's dried. I let this dry overnight, so it's been 24 hours and it's fully cured. So I want to talk about the expanding foam that I used. I always use door and window, but I ran out of it halfway through the project, and I had this big gaps and cracks ones that I never used for this, and I used it to finish the project. So the only difference that I saw was that the red can expands more. So some of the separations on these blocks are bigger. So both of them worked as needed. I still prefer the blue can because it expands less, and we just want it to be a tighter fit. But no matter, we used 13 cans total. So that's a pretty number right there. So now it's time for us to start carving the sides. Not carving, we want to cut it because it's a big cube right now. So start cutting the sides. Start cutting these sharp edges. We're going to use a hot knife. You can use a blade. You can use a long knife. Whatever you have available, use it to start cutting the edges. I'm going to be using a mixture of a knife and a hot knife and a hot wire as well. We're just going to start cutting it because we want to get rid of as much of these hard edges as possible because we want to start getting it that, you know, round shape. So this is going to take some time, but let's get started. So we have different tools that we could use to start cutting the styrofoam. Let's start with the most basic one. This is an electric knife. It is an 8-inch blade. When I put it on here right here, it barely makes a dent. In fact, the dent I see it right here, it doesn't cut really good at all. It doesn't have enough power. So an electric knife is a no-go. Here we have my favorite, a reciprocating saw. Now this beast with this large blade that I put on it over here will cut through the corners and edges like a hot knife on butter. This is amazing, but many of my viewers might not have a high-powered tool like this. But if you do, more power to you. We also have this Harbor Freight hot knife. Now this is what I'm going to be using for a lot of the carving. It's pretty solid, it gets really hot, and you can cut easily. It's just slow because it needs to melt as it cuts. So this one is great. Everyone should have this if you're doing anything related with styrofoam. This is what I use all the time. So this will be for smaller areas or where I need more specific details. Safety first, wear hand protection, and wear eye protection when cutting or using power tools. Let's get started. So in order to cut the bottom parts of this, I'm going to tip this on its side. So we're simply going to go like this and gently lay it down. We're going to start cutting over here. So once we've cut enough from the sides, as you can see, we have a better shape to work with. It's no longer a cube. The edges are starting to be softened, more rounded. To continue softening this, we have two options to use. There's many options, but the two options that I like is the curry comb and the angle grinder. So the curry comb is very labor intensive. You go like this and it starts ripping everything off, and you start giving it a better shape, giving it the nice little valleys that a pumpkin has, the rise and falls. The workaround for those not wanting to be so labor intensive is to use an angle grinder. Now this one over here has a 40 grit disc on the top of it, and it's going to make work super simple. So again, I know a lot of you probably don't have an angle grinder, but it's a tool to invest in. I really like this one, was under $100, and then the 40 grit disc makes it super simple to start giving it a better, more rounded shape. And this is what it should look like after you use the reciprocating saw on it. As you can see, it helped out so much to soften these edges, to give it more of a rounded look over here. So we're doing really good. So right now, I'm gonna stop cutting and I'm gonna start marking the ribs. So you wanna put as many ribs as you want. I like to space them out unevenly. So I'll put a rib here, another one here, maybe two more here and another one here. So you just do it in an uneven pattern so it looks very natural. And yeah, we're doing super good. So what we want to do is put this twine, this rope that I have, we're going to put a nail on the top right here. We're going to attach it over there, and then we're going to start making our ribs just like that. So over here on the top, I made a little indentation, like a bowl-like shape. That is for where the stem goes in. Once the stem goes inside of this, little valley we've created, it'll be a more realistic look. Because if you look at a pumpkin, a picture of a pumpkin, where the stem gets attached to the pumpkin, it's a little bit lower than the rest of the top of the pumpkin. So definitely, I did that to give it a more realistic look. So now that we have our rope here, or should I say it's like nylon rope, we're gonna start marking it. So let's get to it. Once we've drawn all our lines, this is what it should look like. As you can see, it's very crude, very light, but we got the lines done. So now what we want to do is these lines, we want to trench them. So you could get the hot knife, reciprocating saw, your angle grinder, whichever tool you have. We need to make these lines about 4 inches deep. Okay, we need to make them deep. And as you can see over here, I did a unique little split off. You can play around with it just to give it a more organic look to it. So once we make these 4 inches deep, that's when we can start using the curry comb or your sander to start making the ribs of the pumpkin. But this needs to be deep. So I'm probably gonna go maybe 5 inches deep, but you could do 4 inches, whichever one you want. Okay, so let's do it. Just like that. Just like that. But as you can see, it can be time consuming and tedious, but we're getting a groove down just like that. So now we need to make it 4 to 5 inches. So this is what we currently have right now. In the last clip, I think I said I was almost done. Looking at it from this angle, I'm not quite there. As you can see, the side walls are kind of straight down, and I want to round them off a little bit more. So I could use my curry comb to take some of this away. So if you're faced with this dilemma that it still looks kind of boxy, what you want to do is reduce this. You want to reduce these sides over here so that if you reduce them more, it'll become more rounded on the side. So that's what I'm going to do now. Now that we have our pumpkin in the shape or in the rough shape that we want, now is when we start using the curry comb. As you can see over here, I'm making them wider and softer. So here's the other rib that we did. We're simply going to get the curry comb at an angle. And just like this, on the right side and on the left side of the rib. And as you can see, it's getting bigger, it's getting wider, and that's exactly what we want. Easy. And as you can see on this side, they're coming out so nicely. Like all of the edges are getting softened with this. And just like that, we make these awesome ribs. So once we're done filling the holes and cracks with this expanding foam, this is what it should look like. All we're gonna do is get an X-Acto knife, a blade, just to cut off these extra pieces, and then we can begin the sanding process. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get our Orbital Sander that I have right here. You can get a regular sander, you can get a sheet of sandpaper and do it yourself, and we're simply gonna start sanding the entire pumpkin. So I'm starting off with 60 grit sandpaper, and I may go up to 80, but it's really up to you and the texture that you like. So once we finish sanding the big ribs, now it's time to get some sandpaper and do it right in between the ribs. So all of this needs to be sanded. So I'll do this by hand, right in between the ribs, just like that. Any areas that need a little bit of touch up, I'll do it. And I'm using 80 grit sandpaper. You can definitely use a 60 grit or 100 grit. I just think the 80 grit works for me right here. So we're gonna do that throughout the entire ribs, all the way around, and then we're gonna turn this around on its side, and we're gonna do it from the bottom. I went on Google Images, I found a jack-o'-lantern that I like, so I'm gonna try to freehand the eyes and the mouth. So another thing, there's various cracks and separations in the styrofoam blocks that didn't get filled well with the expanding foam. As you can see here, this is all filled in nicely, but then we'll have spaces here that are much deeper that didn't get filled in nicely. So what I'm trying is something that I haven't tried with the last pumpkin. This is called Premixed Vinyl Spackle. I got this because it's rated for interior and exterior use. So I use this spackle on various areas of the jack-o'-lantern to kind of fill in the gaps and holes and to smooth in some areas. It is sandable, it is paintable, so that's really good. That's what we're looking for because we need to paint this jack-o'-lantern when we're done. So I wanted to show you really quickly, this knife is so unique because it has a blade on the top, the bottom, and right there in the front. So it's perfect when you want to go into the styrofoam, and that is what I'm using right here. I simply go into it like this, and just like that. It's so easy, or you can cut up or down, but see, it's just really simple to use it this way, and that's what I'm doing. So this is exactly how we're taking off the inside styrofoam. One of the final things we have to do on this pumpkin is create the stem on top. So I have a single block right here, and I'm going to draw just a rough shape of a stem. So let's get going. As a word of safety, always cut styrofoam when you're melting it outside or in a well-ventilated area. Wear a respirator. You don't want to be breathing in these fumes that come out of melting styrofoam, okay? So let's get started. So draw your design on the side that you want to start, but I didn't know which one I wanted, so I did 4 different styles. And as you can see, it's very versatile. You can do any size you want. I'm definitely going to go with this one right here. So I'm going to get my hot knife, start cutting it out, and let's see if we can get a nice looking stem out of this. So this is what it should look like once you're done carving yours out. But in order to get a smooth finish, I used my Orbital Sander. I have 80 grit sandpaper, but you could use 20 or you could use 100 grit sandpaper. Just whatever's to your liking, but I used 80 on that and really nice and smooth. Then I got a marker and then I drew lines, and these lines are going to turn into the ribs. And I made sure that I was following the flow of this curve that we have here. Then I got my hot knife and I went in about 2 inches like that. Followed the line, and then made all of these channels. And I'm going to bring it a little closer so you can see all these channels that I currently have in there. And those channels have to be rounded out. And just like we did the pumpkin, that we did the ribs and the channels, and then we use sandpaper, we're going to use some sandpaper. Maybe I'm going to use a brush to try to scrape off a lot of this so we can round out these edges. And you're going to see how nice it's going to look. So then, see the channel here, right here? So we're just going to get on the sides and we're going to start doing this. Once we're done with one side, we're going to go to the next side and do the same thing. What we're trying to do is round the edges. So we're going to do this until we get a nice rounded look to it. And we'll keep on doing it like that, okay? Okay, so look at this really quickly. So this is the regular side that we haven't used sandpaper on. And as we turn it around, look at that. Look how it completely changes it. So what we're doing is just getting the sandpaper, folding it really just like this, and going right in between the lines, like that. And then at an angle for this side, and that at another angle for the other side. And we're doing that all the way down, creating these awesome ribs over here. So we need to keep on going at it till they're really nicely rounded, and we'll continue with the stem. So now it's time to paint the pumpkin, but we first need to weatherproof it. I'm going to be using DryLok, a gallon of DryLok. This is a waterproofer for basements and masonry walls. So we're going to use this on the pumpkin. I've never used this on a pumpkin before, but a lot of other creators have, and it works great. I'm going to do 2 coats. It only takes about 2 to 3 hours for it to dry. And once it's done, that's when we can start painting it with the orange and paint the stem brown as well. So let's get started. For the stem, I'm simply going to use expanding foam on the bottom to attach the stem to the pumpkin. And then any expanding foam that comes out, I'm just going to cut it and we'll be good to go. So I wanted to show you all, over here is where we put the spackle, the vinyl exterior spackle. So what we want to do is just grab a sanding block. This is for drywalls. I believe this one is 80 grit, and we're simply going to run it over like that. Super simple, and it makes the spackle smooth. So remember, we're using the spackle in seams where there's dents, where there's holes, and it makes it smoother. So before painting or anything, we're going to do that really quickly on the area.